Hello, this is Donald Jenkins, your Master Purpose Development Coach and the CEO of the Purpose Development Institute. And welcome to the liability responsible for employees sleeping on diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Hey, listen, I am excited that you took some time out of your busy schedule to pretty much learn how building a partnership with the Purpose Development Institute could certainly add value to your diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So, in this presentation, we're going to unpack what we call the liability that's responsible for employees sleeping on this type of training. And I'm sure that you will agree. I've been in presentations where, when they find out it's a diversity training, the biggest thing that people say is, "Oh no, not again," because people are experiencing what we call diversity fatigue. So we have to understand what we need to do as leaders, how to lean into a different level of genius to help them overcome that diversity fatigue so that now we can address the liability for them that's responsible for them sleeping on this type of training, because I'm sure that you agree that diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been important for your organization. And I think that with recent events that have happened in America, we understand the importance of being able to build this type of culture where it's diverse, it's equitable, and people, feel like that they are included in, within the culture. So let's look at the liability that's responsible for people going through training programs, but they're sleeping on the content when they leave the classroom. Well, guess what that does for your organization? It reduces the return on investment. Organizations are spending billions of dollars, on diversity, equity, and inclusion training every year, but they're going through what I call the cycle of insanity. We keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, but we keep getting the same results, which is allowing us to be in a cycle of insanity. So I'm going to unpack a very important liability that I promise you haven't taken into consideration. But if you want to increase the return on your investment, you need to understand what this liability is and how it's affecting your organization. So here's a gentleman that I got connected to back in 2020 when, during the George Floyd situation. I had a chance to attend some of his webinars and connect with him via LinkedIn and some of the other things that he's doing in the UK. And his name is Dr. Biana Kendola. And he wrote a very important book that I suggest that all leaders read if you're interested in dealing with racism at work. And he made a very important statement that caught my attention in his book. He said, establishing meaningful contact with other groups is the most effective way of reducing prejudice. I'm going to say that again. We're looking for the most effective way. That's what we need in order to get the highest return on your investment. So Dr. Candola talked about that this meaningful contact is the most effective way. Now, the question is, how do we build that meaningful contact? See, there's a liability that you need to be aware of that is undermining that meaningful contact. And that's what this presentation is designed to help you understand. How do you identify what that liability is, and how do you remove that liability? And he went on and stated that contact which is pleasant but has no real purpose does nothing to reduce discrimination against minority group. Now, this is something that's noteworthy. So make sure that you take a snapshot of the screen, make note, because this is the core of why we need this level of training, why you need to build a partnership with the Purpose Development Institute so that you can tap into some of our expert solutions to help you understand how to build that meaningful contact so that you can get a higher return on your training investment in this particular area. So let's talk a little bit about who we are. We are the co-founders of the Purpose Development Institute in Atlanta, Georgia. On the screen is my business partner, my wife, Dr. Lily. We are that think tank that's been doing this for 30 years to discover why people do what they do. So we know that people come to work with unconscious biases. So why? There has to be a why behind that. So we took a deeper dive. We spent tens of thousands of dollars to be able to understand how to build a strong case of why purpose development is needed in this type of training, why purpose development is needed to address this liability. And we came up with a very important model that I'm going to introduce to you. We call it the PDI SMART model. We created this model to help explain how employees are sleeping on their growth potential to deconstruct unconscious biases. So in other words, they're struggling to make that meaningful contact that Dr. Candola talked about in his book, Racism at Work. So we want to put them in a better position where they can scale their growth potential to deconstruct those unconscious biases within the workplace. Now, we have some great training content out there, but we're coming short because we continue to have to revisit this year after year after year. We're not solving this problem in America, and therefore we're not solving it in corporation. We call it the difference between treating the symptoms versus treating the disease. And with our PDI Smart model, you're going to see a solution that, number one, expose what the disease is so that now you can mobilize your resources within your organization to begin to treat that disease and not the symptoms, because most training contexts, they focus on treating the symptoms and not the disease. So we call this our PDI Smart model. When people are dealing with unconscious biases in the workplace, you want them to be able to make smart decisions about other people, make smart decisions about, working with a diverse group of people, building equitable practices and providing an inclusive culture. You want them to make smarter decisions as a result of that. But here's the problem. You have an inefficient model for them to make those smart decisions. That's the reason why we created the PDI Smart model, so that now your employees can make better decisions. They can make high-level decisions. And when they understand how to make those high-level decisions, guess what happened? They put themselves in a better position of being able to deconstruct those unconscious biases that they have embraced throughout their lifetime. So our research identified recurring themes that exposes the role of purpose in helping people grow from challenges in the human experience. Now, this research is important for your organization. This research is important for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's extremely important because these are recurring themes that apply to everyone that you hire within your organization. They're not going to tell you that they have these themes. It's not going to appear on the resume, but guess what? These are recurring themes that every person bring to work with them, along with their unconscious biases. So we want to make sure that they understand how to use the human experience to grow. So let's unpack the human experience just for one moment here. In the human experience, we all come from different cultures that allow us to embrace different biases. So we need to make sure that we're able to use those experiences to not harbor those biases, but to grow in those moments, so that now we're not in a position where we're continuing to propagate these biases from one generation to the next. That's what we have in America. Because we're using an inefficient model, we have people in their experience, in their cultures, they continue to be exposed to these biases, and they continue to propagate these biases. They bring them to work, they hide behind the titles, they hide behind, so many different things in the workplace, but they're still harboring these biases. They're still harboring these microaggressions against people that are different than they are. So now we have a solution to that. We have a solution to where now we can help people work with a more efficient model. And that's the reason why working with the Purpose Development Institute is going to be important, because now we introduce that more efficient model. Get rid of the old model, the less efficient model, the model that's not going to give you the highest return on your training investment, in exchange for a model that's going to give you a better return on your investment. So we made it simple. Okay. My wife and I, Dr. Lily and I, my business partner, we made it simple. Okay. There's a lot of data analytics, the science behind our research, but we made it simple. We created what we call the 4 purpose development checkpoints, which are identified by the 4 colors of the triangle. We just want you to remember what those colors represent, and that's what this presentation is going to do. It's going to teach you about, each checkpoint and how it's important for being able to help individuals make that meaningful contact. See, it's this model that allowed them to make that meaningful contact. The reason why, we continue to have these issues in the workplace, because we're working with a model that's not efficient when it comes to helping employees make meaningful contact. So when people have a weak command for the 4 checkpoints, they will struggle to exercise their growth potential to be the best version of themselves. And that's the reason why people have microaggressions in the workplace, because they have a weak command for the 4 checkpoints. See, this is the reason why you have to bring us in. Allow us to integrate our model into your training resource. See, we are integrators. We come in, whether it's leadership, whether it's diversity, equity, inclusion, change management, and we are the experts in integrating our model into your existing practices so that now you don't have a diversity policy, you have a diversity purpose. See, without this model, all you have is a diversity policy. And I'm sure that you would agree that people repudiate policy, but they embrace purpose. I'm going to say it again. People will repudiate your employees. They will repudiate policy, but they will embrace purpose. This is the reason why this model is extremely important for your organization. So here's a very important quote by Stephen Covey. I'm sure that you know who this individual is. He stated that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So everything that you know about your employees, strip it away, because I'll need you to begin to expand your thinking and understand that you're working with spiritual beings, meaning that they can grow beyond their biases, but they're having a human experience. So we have to make sure that we are able to give them a model to be able to make meaningful contact within the human experience. So without purpose development, the human experience will turn into a human experiment to find meaning in life. So here's the deal. When you have training where your employees cannot find meaning in life, that training doesn't lead to meaning in life, then it's going to turn into a human experiment. They're going to experiment with the training. If it don't work, they're going to go right back to their biases. And this is what we see within the marketplace currently. Individuals that are going through, a myriad of training, year in, year out, but they're figuring it out that it's not working. It's the same thing that they learned year before. It's the same genius. It's not leaning into a new level of genius. So they continue to experiment, go right back because they're looking for meaning. Meaning is the game changer. That's the reason why purpose development, your ability to build a partnership with our organization is extremely important, because we're the experts in helping you make that meaningful contact. So now let's talk about some objectives. Number one, we're going to identify the liability that's responsible for undermining growth potential. Number two, we're going to connect the checkpoints to the liability. Number three, we're going to activate the purpose business to eliminate the liability. These are things that you need to do for your organization if you want to have a more effective diversity, equity, and inclusion culture. You need to have mechanisms that identify the liability, that can connect the checkpoints to the liability, and that can activate the purpose business. See, many organizations have trainings that does not activate the purpose business. And you're going to learn about that. I'm going to unpack that for you so you can understand how the purpose business can contribute to a higher return on your training investment. So let's start with unpacking liability. Inspect the SIC code of your industry, for your industry. Your organization is in the people business. I tell all of my executives, all my leaders within corporations, regardless of what your industry might be, you're in the people business. And there are some things that you need to know about the people business. Now, they're not going to teach you this in, business school and management school, but you're going to learn it here at the Purpose Development Institute, because we teach you how to get the most out of the people business simply because of what we call the source root analysis. So you got to go back to the root of why people do what they do. You see, there's a root that's responsible for every person within your organization, regardless of what their economic background might be, their social status, their, racial status. It doesn't matter what part of the world that they're from. That's what we call the source root analysis. So what we do here at the Purpose Development Institute, we take you through this analysis. And that's what this training is going to do. It's going to give you a firsthand look of the analysis to discover that liability. You see, it's one thing to spend a lot of money on training, but you still have this liability. Why are you spending so much money on training, diversity, equity, and inclusion training with the liability still intact? That doesn't make sense. And now you begin to understand why. All right. So what the source root analysis means, it's a detailed analysis of the Hebrew letters to identify the codes for extracting purpose out of the human experience. So here's the deal. You have people that are coming into your organization. They have all these different experiences that they're bringing to your company. but they have been lacking the codes or the mechanism to extract purpose out of their experiences. And as a result of that, they harbor unconscious biases as they come to work. They bring these biases to work with them because they don't have this code. The Hebrew letters is ancient wisdom that reveals the source of why we do what we do. They are codes of divine purpose that give us a blueprint for how we're supposed to extract purpose out of the human experience. Very powerful insight. See, that's what we bring to the table at the Purpose Development Institute. Now, the reason why I tell you that story is because now you understand why we encourage all of our leaders to lean into a different level of genius. See, it wasn't until a few years ago. We've been doing this for well over 25 years with the Purpose Development Code. That prior to that, we were leaning into that old level of genius as well. And I finally realized that this is insane. Why are we doing the same thing in diversity, equity, and inclusion, getting the same results? We got to lean into something new. That's when we begin to seek out, what those solutions are. And even in our research program, we had opportunities to vet purpose development with researchers from around the country at the doctoral level. And we begin to discover what those themes are that identifies those codes of purpose that allow us to extract purpose out of the human experience. So we're going to look at what we call the letter H. It's used to reveal the liability responsible for employees' poor response to training deliverables. All right. This is where you are within your organization. Regardless of how good the training might be, the training deliverables are on point. Okay. Let's deconstruct unconscious biases. Let's minimize microaggressions. Let's do all of the things. It's on point. But how are the people responding to that? That's the question that we have to answer. That's the question that we did answer here at the Purpose Development Institute. So the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet that uses the thought, speech, and actions to expose the personal growth gap. See, here's the problem that you're having with the return on your investment in this type of training is that there's a gap in the personal growth. This letter represents something very powerful that we're going to unpack here. But there's a gap here that it reveals. You see the gap between this line and the line up here, and that's called the personal growth gap. Personal growth gap. That is a very important gap that's causing microaggressions within your organization. It's causing discrimination. It's causing microaggression. It's causing people to harbor their unconscious biases. Now, if you have training that, that's great, but it doesn't address this gap, then all you have is a diversity policy. So closing this gap gives you a diversity purpose. Now you're going to have people or employees with a higher buy-in because you incorporated a system, you integrated a model. See, it's all about the model. You have to have the right model for closing this gap. And existing diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, they fail to close this gap. So as a result, we are ignoring a very powerful solution to helping people deconstruct unconscious biases by helping them scale their growth potential, close that gap in their personal growth. Extremely important. So now let's analyze the letter H. The top of the letter H is a horizontal line, and it represents that our thoughts are constant. Okay, this letter represent things that we experience in the human experience. We have certain thoughts about the human experience. So thoughts are constant. We're constantly thinking about something. All right, so thoughts are constant. But then we have the vertical line, which represent or is symbolic of speech. Speech is measurable. It's up and down. It's on the vertical line. Sometimes we talk too much. Sometimes we're not talking enough. So speech is on that up and down vertical line. Then we have that other line that represent the action. And as you can see, actions are disconnected. So you have employees that they have, after your training, they have good thoughts. All right. They have a good language now, but their actions are lagging behind because of that gap. I'm going to say it again. You covered the good thoughts in your training. Okay. You covered the good language. Now people are understanding how to respect people. They have the better language now. They are politically correct, but the actions are still lagging behind because of the gap. The gap is the liability. This is where we have failed in diversity, equity, and inclusion training. We failed to close the gap. The gap is the liability. So this is the reason why people are sleeping on diversity, equity, and inclusion training, because we have failed to close the personal growth gap. Can't say it enough. So speakers motivate to close the gap. Preachers preach to close the gap. Coaches offer accountability to close the gap. Organizations provide training to close the gap. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to provide training to close the gap. But without purpose development, you're not closing the gap. And that's the reason why it's important that you build a partnership with the Purpose Development Institute. So the problem in corporate America is that organizations fail to lean into a new level of genius for helping employees close the personal growth gap. That's the biggest problem. We're spending billions of dollars on this problem, but what about closing the gap? We got to bring in the PDI SMART model to introduce the new level of genius to close the gap. That's why companies are full of employees with great intentions, but weak growth potential to carry out what they learn in the classroom. Wow. That's where we are. You know, you don't want to be in that place in your organization. You don't want to have employees with great intentions. You know, the intentions to, they're thinking the right thing, they're saying the right thing, but the actions are still lagging behind. We say it like this, is that intuitive growth is a lagging indicator when it comes to training and development. So you have to build a partnership with the PDI. So because we are the experts, we have the model to be able to mitigate the lagging behind of those actions when it comes to executing those deliverables within your culture. So let's take a look at the checkpoints. They provide the genius for closing the gap in our personal growth, the personal growth gap. And you can see it there. Now we're going to get into that genius. What does that genius look like? You see, this is the first time that we're discussing that. See, we are the specialists in this area. You have a very robust program. You've done a lot of work and done a lot of testing to see where people are at. You've had courageous conversations. You came in and you analyzed the culture. You've done the preliminary stuff, but now you need a specialist to come in and close the gap in helping individuals deconstruct those unconscious biases. All right. So it's extremely important because this is how you help people show up to be the best. All right. But you must know their position on all 4 checkpoints, because that's what you want people to do. You want them to show up to practice purpose and not practice their unconscious biases. I'm going to say it again. You want them to show up and practice purpose. See, many training organizations or deliverables, this is what we want, but we don't have the model. We don't have the model to achieve that end. And that's why building a partnership with us is that we're going to bring that model in so that now you can have a higher return on your investment. But we're going to take a deeper dive into what those checkpoints look like. All right, checkpoint 1. People must have a clear path for rebuilding and reconstruction relationship between who they are and their environment. So I have a question for you. What mechanism are you using to help your employees rebuild those reconstruction relationships between who they are and their environment? See, that is extremely important when it comes to deconstructing unconscious biases. So if you don't have a mechanism in place for that, then those biases are going to always be there. You're going through training year in, year out, but the biases are still there. People are still harboring those biases. They're still harboring those microaggressions because they don't have the mechanism in place for building those reconstruction relationships. Number 2, people or employees must have skills to reverse the effects of purpose deficit disorder. Question: what mechanism are you using to reverse the effects of PDD? See, PDD is that thing that causes individuals to become a product of their environment. I'm going to say it again. PDD is responsible for your employees becoming a product of their environment, which increases the risk for them bringing their unconscious biases to the workplace. You want to minimize that risk. This is the reason why you need us. You need purpose development. All right, because we're the only organization in the world that can reverse the effects of PDD. That's what our training it will help you do. Checkpoint 3, people must have a blueprint for cracking the master purpose code. We want people to be the best we want them to be the best in creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment. But you have to crack the master purpose code. Many people feel like that organizations are having to crack the whip in this area. We having to crack the whip with people being the best in diversity, equity, and inclusion because we don't know how to crack the master purpose code. You can get more out of people by cracking the master purpose code. Well, guess what? We are the experts in cracking the master purpose code. That's what our organization, that's what we do. We crack that code. We come in, we put the system in place to crack that code so that now your employees can show up and practice brotherhood. They can practice diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want it to not just be something that they learn in the classroom. It's a good idea. It's a good thought. It's a good speech, but it doesn't turn into good actions. We want it to turn into good actions because we understand how to crack the master purpose code. Lastly, people must develop the quality to sustain a strong sense of purpose in the human experience. So what I just described to you with the 4 checkpoints, I just described to you a very innovative way on how to create meaningful contact. Remember, Professor Candola, very prominent, psychiatrist in the UK stated that the most effective way of ending racism is creating meaningful contact. Well, we just gave you a blueprint. Remember I said at the beginning, how do you do that? Well, we answered that how. We answered that how with the 4 checkpoints, giving people a stronger command for the 4 purpose development checkpoints. That's how you do it. That's how you allow us to come in and put a system in place to get this done for you so that now you don't put yourself in a position to have a low return on the investment that you're putting into helping to produce a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. So here's a thought. The people business, what we just requires developing skills for the purpose business. So remember, you are in the people business now. You have to understand the purpose business. Why? Because the purpose business will help you rebuild the structural integrity of purpose and close the personal growth gap. That's what we do. We come in, we rebuild, and we close. I'm going to say it again. We rebuild and we close the gap. We rebuild the structural integrity and we close the gap. Listen, creating that type of environment is not complete until you rebuild the structural integrity of purpose and you close the personal growth gap. Otherwise, we're just throwing money at a problem, treating symptoms instead of treating the disease. See, here's the deal. When I rebuild the structural integrity of purpose, I'm treating the disease behind unconscious biases, behind microaggression. When I close that gap, I'm treating the disease. That's the reason why our partnership is crucial. So here's how we define the purpose business. It's the science of discovering purpose beyond what people do for a living. So the PDI SMART model can be fully integrated into the human experience. This is what people are missing. They're missing the right model. They're working with the wrong model. You're giving them great training, but they're working with the wrong model. You need a model that can be fully integrated into the human experience. We are the experts in that. So the things that they're learning at work will affect them at home and their culture. They will not only learn how to affect change at work, but they will learn how to affect change in their culture. Instead of them becoming a product of their culture, now they can go back and affect change within their culture, and your organization would be responsible for that change. Isn't that exciting? It's exciting to know that your organization can be responsible for not just changing the workplace culture, but you can be responsible for changing the culture of America. All right. That's the power of building a partnership with the Purpose Development Institute. That's the reason why you need to go through our training. You need to either have someone become diversity purpose certified or become a certified purpose development coach, go through our training so we can help integrate this model into your existing practices. All right. So purpose development is that science behind what people do for a living. We have the largest body of content in the world for rebuilding the structural integrity of purpose so that employees can reach the highest growth potential. You're not going to find many organizations out there that have the content that we have developed through our research. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on this research to come up with this content to help you, to help your organization not just look good on paper, not just look good as a policy, but to look good in practice, because now you have integrated a more efficient model, a model that's going to help your employees rebuild that structural integrity of purpose so that now they can make that meaningful contact when they reach their highest growth potential. Extremely important. So purpose development is your frontline defense. So the question is, does your organization have a frontline defense against the meaning crisis? See, people coming into your organization, they're already in a meaning crisis. All right. A crisis that they don't understand how to make meaningful contact. That's what the meaning crisis represent. These are individuals who don't have the skills to make meaningful contact. So what is your frontline defense with that? Because if you don't have a frontline defense, then guess what's going to happen? They're not going to be able to put themselves in a better position to make that meaningful contact. So that deals with checkpoint 1. Checkpoint 2, purpose development is the solution for reversing the effects of PDD. All right. Purpose development is that solution. You don't have that solution on deck, but when you build a partnership with our organization, now you're going to have that solution. Purpose development provides the blueprint for cracking the master purpose code. We are the experts in cracking that code. We understand how to crack that code so that now you don't have to crack the whip to get people to practice diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's better to crack the code. You get more out of people when you can help them show up to practice diversity, show up to practice equitable practices within the workplace, and practice inclusion. All right. Why is this is so important? Because you close the personal growth gap. You close that gap. All right. And that closing that gap is extremely important. Purpose development reveals the 2 systems of the soul that are responsible for sustaining meaningful excellence in the human experience. So here's the deal. Our research revealed that people want to have meaningful excellence in the human experience. That's what our research, all the participants in our research, they revealed that this is what people are looking for. All right. But there are 2 systems that are responsible for that. Well, you're looking at the organization. You're building a partnership with the organization to understand what those systems look like. We are the experts in bringing those systems back online, because when you hire them, those systems are offline, and your company can be on the cutting edge of bringing those systems back online so that now your employees can make meaningful contact. And when they make meaningful contact, they're going to put an end to racism. They're going to put an end to discrimination. They're going to put an end to microaggression. They're going to put an end to all the things that would take away from the value that all of your employees can bring to your organization. That's the reason why this is powerful. Here's a closing statement. A person's degree of success in the future is dependent on the degree of purpose in the present. So if you really want to help your employees out in regards to increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workplace, give them a strong degree of purpose for the moment. The problem is we've been bringing in training that doesn't provide the model for increasing the degree of purpose for the present. You're working with an inefficient model. We're going to bring in a better model to increase the degree of purpose for the present. And when we increase the degree of purpose for the present, then they're going to increase the degree of success beyond the classroom, beyond, the workplace culture. Now you're going to begin to affect change in the culture of this great country. So every organization needs a certified purpose development coach to help rebuild the structural integrity of purpose. That's what we suggest. We have a certified coaching program, that include our diversity purpose training. It includes the certified purpose development training. Every organization need that, because you don't have a mechanism in place for rebuilding the structural integrity of purpose to make meaningful contact, to bring an end to this madness in diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the reason why building that partnership with us is extremely critical to help you minimize that threat. So train with the experts in integrating the PDI SMART model into your organization. That's what we do. We are the experts. We're able to come in. We have a process, a very comprehensive process to be able to come in to integrate this model into your culture, so that now the existing training that you have, guess what? Now they are able to practice the stuff that they're learning within your organization. So here's what I need you to do. Go to our website, www.pdiatl.com/event. You're going to come to our event calendar. Make sure that you schedule a free discovery call with us. Let's talk about the different pathways and how you can build a partnership with the Purpose Development Institute to begin to build that culture where everyone in the culture can make meaningful contact and put an end to the madness when it comes to discrimination, racism, microaggressions within your organization, and get a higher return on your investment. Again, my name is Donald Jenkins. I am your Master Purpose Development Coach, the CEO of the Purpose Development Institute, and I look forward to being able to partner with your organization to integrate the PDI SMART model.